Okay. Good morning. I would say good afternoon, good evening, or good night, because we have people from several places of the world who came together for this meeting. I'm Glenn Sankatsing from the Rescue Our Future Foundation, hosting this peer-to-peer dialogue from what I see a sunny morning in the Caribbean island of Aruba. How to free our minds in the age of propaganda. This is the first, and I would say most important challenge we face if we are to break the deadlock in our quest for a better version of humanity. Once we have answered this question, we must translate it into transformative action if we want to end today's stressful frustration that we see in the global environmental and peace movement. How has it been possible that the forces of change have lost the game for a healthy planet and a peaceful world for half a century, so that ecological collapse and global war are now imminent threats to our continued existence on Earth? The answer is that propaganda is the strategic tool for system maintenance, using surveillance, censorship, anti-social media, and peer-reviewed fake news to silence critical voices and stifle transformative action. All prevailing powers impose self-serving narratives to shape history with a crude mixture of truths and lies. The reason for this is that domination without dominating the mind leads to rebellion. As Thomas' theorem reminds us, if men define situations as real, they are real in their consequences, regardless of whether they are true or false. The system knows that people are willing to die for a lie in which they believe. Our most important challenge, therefore, is to rescue our authentic narrative in order to shape history in line with the driving force of evolution, which is life seeking more life. So the big question for this dialogue is, what actions are needed to restore our narrative? Let me save my thoughts on this for the dialogue itself, and to keep it short. Now, the topic of today's dialogue was proposed by Cees Hameling, who is the president of the Rescue Our Future Foundation, who has studied propaganda for some decades. Cees was willing to give a brief introductory statement. However, since you could not reschedule a medical examination that coincides with this session, he recorded his thoughts for us, and we would like to give him the floor now. Let's listen to him before we continue. I have to share let me share my screen with you.
Earlier this year, I visited the old, beautiful colonial city of Zacatecas in Mexico. I was on a mission because I wanted to visit the library of the Colegio de Propaganda Fide. Zacatecas was one of the three places where the bishops from Rome had established colleges to propagate the Roman Catholic belief. And it is in this 17th century that Pope Gregorius XV, for the first time, coined the concept of propaganda as a term for the distribution, the propagation of a belief system, the Roman Catholic belief system. And I wanted to see in the library what kind of techniques had been applied for this propagation of the belief, because after Pope Gregorius, his colleague Pope Urbanus gave even a school for propaganda, the Escuela de Propaganda de Fide. And I've always been intrigued to see what kind of techniques were used. And that was interesting because looking at all this literature, there was a very clear conclusion. The propaganda, as foreseen by the popes, meant you had a belief system, a vision, a world vision, an idea of how the world should be that needed to impose on others. Secondly, you needed to do that by professional techniques, learning the local language, making paintings that showed the inferiority of the indigenous people. And thirdly, it was all about power. Power not exercised by weapons necessarily, not the physical coercion, but discursive power. And the interesting thing is that since the popes began in the 17th century, propaganda has always been with us in an expanding mode, because you could easily say that today, 21st century, we live in the age of propaganda. And that's clear from all kinds of perspectives. The political perspective, most governments nowadays use perception managers, PR officials, to tell you their side of the story, to convince you to accept their belief on Ukraine, Russia, or Israel, Gaza. Secondly, there is lots of journalists work with these perception managers that help them to propagate those beliefs. Some journalists are even paid to do this by intelligence services, such as the CIA. We also have a new profession in politics and in also other cultural areas like fashion. Those are the influencers, usually young people, that tell you what you should be. And then, of course, we have the e-journal, a ubiquitous advertising. Wherever you drive nowadays on traffic lanes, you find these endless billboards that tell you to buy all kinds of things that you may not need. So we are, in addition to that, there's a lot of censorship. Many messages that you should maybe not hear are being censored away. And then, of course, there is, on top of all of that, there's an enormous state surveillance. The state wants to know not only what you do and has all its intelligence services ready to exploit it, but they also want to know what you think. Now, the interesting thing is that against this enormous global mind control, we have a beautiful article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 80, that says that everyone has the right to freedom of thought. Your thoughts are free. And the interesting thing of this article is that it's not only just one of the articles of the Universal Declaration, but it's binding law. It's one of the few articles that cannot be derogated from. You cannot change that, even not in times of emergency or war. The freedom of expression can be curtailed by governments if they see fit, but the freedom of thought cannot. And yet, in spite of this beautiful article, we see around the world an enormous expanding mind control. And the result of that is what I would call, in the words of Hannah Arendt, thoughtlessness. There's an epidemic of thoughtlessness. Hannah Arendt used that term when she reported about the Adolf Eichmann trial in Jerusalem. When she looked at Adolf Eichmann and says, I saw a banal bureaucrat, an ordinary human being who did not think, who just executed the orders of his bosses. There was no thinking, there was no independent creative thinking, just a bureaucrat. Thoughtlessness. And that thoughtlessness seems to spreading around in the world, and I like to call it with a very specific term, the zombification of our societies. The zombie mode is a term that was proposed by Francis Crick in the 60s. He was a molecular biologist who got the Nobel Prize. And he talked about us as sleepwalkers. Sleepwalking, we go en route to our future without thinking. The zombie mode is a lack of creativity, is a lack of pluriformity, is a lack of critical thinking. And that, to a large extent, I would argue, is a characteristic of our cultural environment today. There are neurobiological explanations for this zombie mode, for the zombification. And Dr. Michael Niels wrote a beautiful book on this, Indoctrination. And the interesting thing is that the subtitle is how to successfully fend off the global attack on your mental freedom. So our mental freedom is at stake. And if we don't guard that, we may end up in what Glenn Sankatsky likes to call mental slavery. I'm not a neurobiologist, so I can't explain what's happening to our societies, the zombification, from a biological perspective, but I can do it from a cultural perspective. We live in two environments, the physical environments that's given to us, and a cultural environment. And the cultural environment that exists of this large amount of different expressions in dancing, singing, in theater, we need that in order to adapt to our physical environment. But just like there is pollution in the physical environment, there's also an increasing pollution in the cultural environment. We live in polluted cultural environments. And you can see that because there's more and more homogeneity, there's less diversity, there's McDonaldization of culture, there's cut downs on cultural programs like in my own country, there's cultural censorship, there's so many problems that pollute the cultural environment. And my thesis is a polluted cultural environment creates the susceptibility to mind control, to mind management. It makes us less equipped to deal with it. So what we need, and I make reference to the 1990s when I was involved with an American colleague, George Gerbner, of the Annenberg School of Communication, in a beautiful project, the Cultural Environment Movement. And for all kinds of reasons, the project withered away. But I think this is the time to reinstate it, to revitalize it. This is the time that we need to build up cultural resistance against the dystopias that Huxley wrote about. We all remember Brave New World. We all remember 1984. The best protection of our mental freedom against the dystopias of Orwell and Huxley that are more real today than when they wrote their beautiful books is a global cultural environment movement, alive and kicking, creative and independent. What a beautiful task for the Rescue Our Future Foundation. And my dear friends, why don't we begin today?
Okay, so thank you, Sais, for this inspiring reflection on propaganda, cultural resistance, and a suggestion for a global culture environment movement. We can now open the floor. It will be an open dialogue to hear your ideas. And when you take the floor, just briefly mention your name, country, field of work in a minute or so. We know that there's there's a wealth of experience that we have and a lot of interesting talk, but we have to try to, in some way, to focus on the theme we are discussing right here. And let me share in the chat some points that you can take as themes. I suggest that you take the diagnosis, which is system maintenance propaganda for narrative hijacking, what we have now. Then we have to look to a solution, which is restoring our authentic narrative to take control of our destiny. And finally, the biggest important issue, I would call it action is the best prediction. Can we have a global rescue of future movement to take action? So but you can intermix these three themes also. So it's not a very strict chronology, but we can have a free-floating discussion on all these themes. Okay, so we can now open the floor for you to share your thoughts. Just raise your hand or just take the floor. You unmute and take the floor. Okay. David, just start if you want.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just because I'm new here and I wanted to get to know everybody. My name is David Bjarnason. I was born and raised in Iceland, which skirts the Arctic Circle in the North Atlantic, but I actually grew up in different parts of the world. And I've lived and worked in Europe and the US, and was raised to have a broad and embracing international worldview. In addition, I've always had a deep curiosity about world cultures, religions, and traditions. Ultimately, I believe that we have more in common than what divides us. Leaning on my background as an investigative journalist and former publisher and editor of Iceland's top-selling holistic magazine, I've delved into history, philosophy, theology, politics, psychology, and behavioral neuroscience to try and figure out how we got here by way of our beliefs as a species. This independent research that has now spanned 15 years is culminating in a book as well as a movie script, both addressing the destiny of humanity as a whole, as well as the state of our humanity. Today, I'm excited to be part of this international discussion as we attempt to figure out why we seem so hell-bent on destroying ourselves along with the environment upon which we all depend. I believe that it has everything to do with what we've been telling ourselves for the past couple of thousand years, which of course includes the current state of our discourse and the quality and integrity of the information that we share, or the total lack thereof, as the case may be. I've been driven by my search for truth, as well as an understanding of all the different ways we try to avoid owning up to it, individually as well as collectively. My focus has been on how we could ultimately break down the barriers that are turning out to be an increasingly tribal and/or cultish approach to information sharing, ending up as thought-terminating rhetoric, falsehoods, and/or unfounded conspiracy theories. In other words, propaganda. So that's me. Glad to meet everybody. Glenn, you're muted again.
Okay, thank you, David. And well, let's continue. Let's just go around. Ronald, maybe you want to share some.
Okay. Again, good day, everyone, or good evening, everyone. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, right now, and born in Canada, but I was raised in Africa and have lived in various parts of the world as well, just like our friend David just mentioned. I think my area of work for the last 20 years has been environmental health, and before that I was specifically involved in the issues of toxic chemicals. I joined this group at the invitation of Glenn, and partly because I have always been, since I can remember, and I'm trying to think, when did I start thinking about environment and development and sustainable development? And that was even before the word sustainable development became sort of the language. I was probably 8 or 9 years old when I started thinking about environment and human well-being and poverty. And I have struggled all my life trying to make this world a more equal world where everybody can prosper and at the same time do so without being a danger to the environment. And I have to say that after 60 plus years, I still don't have the answer. So I am hoping to get more insights by sharing and discussing with others. And so that's a bit of where I come from, and in response a bit to what Cease mentioned, the one thing that did come to me right now in terms of propaganda is the fact that there's a complete lack of trust that has been created here. When I was working for government, I was annoyed to no end how we had become, the government became public relations. And so it was always about looking good. And I think that kind of attitude of just making sure that we always have a good face on behalf, from the point of view of government, and I would say that industry and others do the same, has just mean that nobody trusts what is behind the face. And I actually think that is the underlying issue here. And why propaganda works, in a sense, is because in the end, we distrust everybody because we don't know who to trust and what to trust.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. You can continue if you have want to comment, then you introduce yourself first, and then yes. Or maybe we should just quickly go and just introduce yourself, and then we go to the discussion. Christina, please.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to hear the people around the room because I found it fascinating at the beginning when David started and then Rhoda continued. I like to put together pieces and see similarities, what brings us together. And as far as I see until now, we are from different parts of the world. I'm in Romania, but I consider myself for a long time a global citizen, and this is what I'm also doing with my Tech Leadership Lab project, and can have multiple names as an ecosystem think tank and you name it, to solve the SDG sooner. But I see that people like us who are truly interested in the future and what we leave behind, basically. We just had our first anniversary last week, for example, and I opened up the concept of Earth CEO, which created a little bit of controversy, but from my stand of view and how it was designed, it was what does it mean is to be a good ancestor. So to think about the future, to think about the future generations, and I'm thinking about this group right now here because we are here for humanity, basically. So something is different about our ways to connect and see the world, and we are interested in a common well-being, not just our own personal well-being or success. And so this is for me the first thing that I just want to acknowledge, that you are awesome people just by being here, just by being interested about such topics. And what I found is that we have this polymath aspect in us, where, for example, in my case, I was always focused on two aspects: the human nature. I was super, super curious, understanding, and this was my tagline, 2 decades plus in the trenches, understanding human nature and business success combined, because economics and business and entrepreneurship leads the way into the future. But I was also very, very curious about how we function, because at a very early age, I discovered that we are superficial and very unstable. And I said we can do much better, and how we could do much better. And so this started my journey of going in multiple places, working with different industries, people. And my pursuit was that I don't want to go linear, because if I go linear, I won't grab this global understanding about human nature, who we are, no matter where we are in this globe. So I'm a remote expert over 15 years because of this, because consciously I put myself in environments and learning and understanding people from wherever they are in the globe, to become a non-judgmental person who wants to understand, who uses curiosity, not judgment, about why you are different than me. And through this tool of curiosity, to uncover traits, interesting aspects that can unite us and make us move further to create a beautiful future. Basically, that's why we are here. Propaganda, right? Propaganda, it is something we will debate, but this is the way I just wanted. I felt I need to introduce myself through connecting with you all in this room.
Okay, thank you, Christine. I see that we have the same hometown, planet Earth.
Exactly. Yes, and that's very important.
Thank you. Maria Elena. You
Hi.
and
Okay. Well, from the part of the diagnosis, like you invite us to think about, I think, well, the problems are in the first, the powers to inform in the world. Who has the power to inform? That's the big organizations, like, for example, the United Nations or the media or the rich corporations and churches. So I think we need to think more about who has the power to inform, the quality of information, like you said, be conscious about what is propaganda. For example, United Nations, by the way, just has a program to work on propaganda, but I think it's very well, it is not superfluous. It is maybe you can help me with the word, shallow. And we are not connected to Earth. I think that's another problem. I am an environmental lawyer, and I work with lots of different environments, governments, NGOs, and etc. But I think there's a lot of propaganda to connect with the Earth, but there's really not a toolkit that can make us connect to Earth, to the world as eco-citizens. No, so as solutions, I think about maybe 6 things that I would like to share with you. And the first one is that first we need, yes, the right to inform and the right for expression, like Seth told us in his video. And we need also to rescue authentic narratives, but authentic narratives about how to rescue our future with the heart, also with our minds and with our consciousness. We need to search for truth individually and collectively, like you said. I agree. We need to start a new curiosity in nature of life, the nature of life, and but also with a sense of responsibility and answers inside and outside of ourselves, always trusting yourself and doing good. Maybe this would sound very naive, but I think my parents just told us always do right. So I think we need to start by the beginning of everything, and that is doing right. You just start doing right in everything you do connected to the world. I think those would be my first thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Maria Elena from Mexico. And Elaine, how are you? Can you please share with us introduce yourself and your point?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Good to join you, Glenn. Sorry, I'm coming in late. I wasn't quite able to connect with Padgett as clearly. I just called him, but I didn't get him. So I apologize for his absence. this topic is so complex. We can address it on the individual level, on the social level, on the national level, and on the international level. In fact, we have to. All of those levels have to be a part of the solution. I think many of us here are addressing it on an individual level. Maria just spoke about NGOs. I volunteer at the UN. And whenever we have sessions that I'm able to attend or I choose to attend, I can see delegates throwing up their hands when it comes to the United States. Because the United States is so divided, so maybe even careless about climate change. And it's one of the greatest polluters. So right there, we see an example of the problem we have. The United Nations is its third iteration. And we had the League of Nations before that, and I've forgotten what the other one was before that. But it has the same essential problems. The United Nations is not fully respected. It is not given the powers to negotiate, to mitigate, to engage that it should. So we have the Security Council, and right now we can think of many examples of where a reasonable proposal was put forward to save lives and to do something reasonable, and it got vetoed. 5 major countries among the worst polluters have veto power. So countries that are literally suffering right now and not finding relief. In fact, they're being imposed upon, told they should do more to combat climate change. And it's costing them a pretty penny, if they try to do anything. These are people who are already suffering. Countries, I mean, many of the countries in Africa, for one thing. So the whole issue of what kind of system of respect that we can create at a global level has not been fully addressed. And we are now in a global world. We are in anything of consequence is happening at a global level, especially with the use of technology that is available to private companies, not just governments, which make them almost equal in power to governments in terms of controlling outcomes when it comes to producing things, which is what they're always about. And we don't seem able to address this problem in any real way. So people who have acquired, I mean, we're not talking about billionaires anymore. We're shooting for trillionaires. I mean, that's a lot of power. And we're just unable to negotiate with these people. I mean, if a couple of these tech companies put their monies together, they're going to have more money than most of the countries in Africa. That's a lot of power. So I think we have to begin to see how we can address these issues on a larger scale. Because I think all of us here are committed individually to doing the best that we can to solve the problem, but it's not the most effective way. So I think I've made a couple of points. I think I'm just going to stop there. Thanks, Glenn. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Let's continue with Erika. Just introduce yourself, then we can go for the discussion.
Hi, I'm gonna leave my video off because my internet signal is not too strong, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I'm Erica Smith. I live in the United States in Florida. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Sure.
Sorry, just one second. I apologize. I'm a mom. My little boy just came in, so I had to redirect him. But um, I'm not yet 40, so I'm pretty young. And just in, you know, my lifetime, I kind of grew up in middle class poverty. So my whole life has kind of been a struggle, and I've seen other people around me struggle. And so I've looked for other solutions to, creating more equality and just having better quality of life for myself, my child, that kind of thing. And as far as the topic for today, I'm just curious to, hear everyone else's thoughts on everything because I'm studying journalism myself. I started a journal 2 years ago, and it's going a little slow because I'm still, just getting into it. But um, I've I've just always been very curious about things, and sometimes that curiosity can, sometimes the curiosity can lead you to places that other people don't want you to be. So, I've experienced, seeing some of the darker sides of how, human behavior can be. And I've also seen, especially, when the COVID pandemic came along, um, there was definitely a lot of propaganda from almost every side, it seems like. And just different things that I've researched. There's, sometimes you get this message that, we have it figured out and this is cut and dry when it's really not that clear. And there should be more, open discussion going on and things like that. So um, I'm hoping to use my platform, as a tool to, kind of share my perspectives and, things that I see that other people may not be hearing as much and things like that. So I think I've rambled on enough, but yeah, just happy to be here and, participate in this conversation because it's definitely something I've experienced in my own life. Um, so yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Erika. Inge, just briefly introduce yourself if you want.
Do you hear me?
Yes. Thank
Yes. Yes. Well, I do believe propaganda is a big issue. And would it be an idea to make a positive propaganda in a way of an exhibition with beautiful nature? I saw it myself in Antwerp, in a church with art of nature, and it was combined with texts of Laudato Si, the Pope Francisco. He made beautiful texts of how to look after nature better, and that capitalism is destroying the nature. And all his text was so beautiful to be combined with showing how beautiful nature is, and that if you do it in that way, I feel it can be a positive message where we want to go to, where we believe in, where all people, like Karen Armstrong wrote about in her book, The Holy Nature, all people around the world from the beginning, they have this special connection with nature. We all love nature. So if you make the propaganda a positive message and show how beautiful all flowers and trees and patterns and all the diverse creatures there are, and that people become more modest, that we are destroying things and we should take care better. So that's my question. I make also art, and I say I'm not the artist, nature is artist. And maybe worldwide we can show all the beautiful pictures and make a big exposition with texts like showing the way to go. Instead of where something against, we can say, this is where we want to take care of. Do you recognize that? And would people love to help me?
Mhm.
That's my question.
Thank you, Inge. Sanjivani, just you briefly introduce yourself and make your point, Sharon.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Sanjeevani from India, and I'm exploring for ecological development because after my studies, I found that there are many problems that we need to solve, and the problems that we are facing now, that's global warming and climate change, all those things, they are connected with economy, and I'm trying to make the balance. I'm trying to find out the resources or find out the solutions so that we can have a balance between economy and ecology. And also, I'm trying to explore as well as dig deep to find out the root causes of the problems that we are facing. And maybe that will help me to move ahead. And yeah, now I'm very young among you all, so I exactly don't know what to say on this platform. But yeah, it's a pleasure to listen you all. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Sanjivani. We need young people because they are the one who will populate the future. And indeed, ecology and economy have the same root echo, which means home. So we have to keep our home clean and good to live from it. There's one single story. Enrique, please. Enrique? Okay, maybe it's not there yet, or mute. Okay, Gabi. No, we don't hear you, Enrique.
Yeah.
You have to unmute. Wait a minute, the accent in chat whether we hear him, but you have
Enrique?
to.
Okay,
Enrique.
Enrique has to unmute.
Yeah, yes, now it's okay. Yes, Enrique, go on. Oh, but we don't hear yet. No. Okay, so let's check it out, and Gabi just continue, and then Enrique can come in.
Yes, Elaine was absolutely right that this issue is complex, especially with the sophistication of the communication and information technologies, who are owned by more or less the same proprietors around the world, and how is being developed, you know, the organization and the media. But thanks to that is that we are talking today to the internet. And so we saw it in the Corona time, and all this censorship with the terrible things happening and the wars now. The ones deciding is YouTube or well, the same owner. So it's complex. But yes, here I am also trying to explore new ideas and actions. What can we do together? Sharing this spirit to live a better world, especially for the younger generations. Thank you, Glenn, to open this opportunity.
Since we already heard you, your presentation, so you can just tell us a little bit about yourself to our people. If you unmute, says yes.
Thank you, Glenn. So far in this discussion, there were two moments that I found very important. It was the remark by Erika about curiosity, because the best way to fight propaganda is being curious. That's precisely what is not wanted. I mean, an artificial intelligence steered society doesn't need curious people, doesn't need creative people. They are the sand in the gears, as the Americans would say. So that's our best protection. Continue to be curious, ask ourselves questions, not always run for answers. try to live without answers. And the second remark was from Inge about can't we send a positive message? Well, that was precisely what triggered off in the 1990s, the cultural environment movement. I was involved in that in 1996 when we established a global cultural environment movement in St. Louis in the United States. And that movement was driven by the need to counteract all the negative narratives that the media are telling us all over the world. Media that tell us that you should fight a war in order to get peace, that you should use machines in order to understand human beings. So against these narratives, we decided that everything turns around stories. Stories are the most beautiful treasures of humanity. We've always told each other stories. And we are forgetting it now, because now the stories that are being told by the media, by politicians and by the propagandists. So we said in the 90s, let's get back to storytelling. Stories about how the world is and how the world could be and how the world should be and how we can play a role in that. And what we did at the opening conference of that beautiful meeting in St. Louis, we invited storytellers from the American indigenous population. And that was wonderful. And we sat, around tables and we listened to their stories. And the stories were inspiring, also heartbreaking. Was a lot of emotion, but we all learned a lot more than from years watching television. And so that the main motive of the cultural environment movement is for all kinds of reasons, the movement withered away as these things happen. But I want to have a very strong plea that also the Rescue Our Future Foundation gets involved in revitalizing that moment, because the more our cultural environment pollutes, the more we are open to brainwashing and to mind control. Our best reserve is our cultural and spiritual reserve. And so we should revitalize that. We should revitalize, like we did in the 90s, this whole concept of storytelling. Why not make a major worldwide movement for storytelling, positive stories, as Inge just said, that will help us to see perspective, because I firmly believe that our future will depend upon the stories that we tell each other. If we keep telling each other belligerent, dystopic stories, we will not make it to the end. If we want to continue with living and flourishing together on this planet, we need positive stories, and we need coalitions with other groups. And now it's all spread out, and all polarized, but there's everywhere in the world there's groups that want to form coalitions, with people who are creative workers and who experience a lot of trouble these days. There's a lot of resistance against creative work. There's a lot of diminishing of economic funding. There's a incredible lot of censorship of creative work. So creative workers need to be supported. And I think a foundation like ours, the Rescue Our Future Foundation, could play a very crucial role in mobilizing those coalitions, mobilization of coalitions of storytellers. There's much more to be said on this, but let me leave that for the moment.
Okay, thank you, Sage. I see Maria Elena. Before Maria Elena takes the floor, we have had the first hour now, so we'll continue, but then we can focus now. I put it in a wrong way, but I put now some points in the chat that, and the third one is very important, that what action are we going to take for this cultural movement, what they said, this cultural environmental movement, but also that whole storytelling, the narrative, because if we don't own the narrative, we don't own history. Okay, so let's focus now in the last hour on these things that we enter with some conclusions. Maria Elena, please. Unmute.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I was thinking about the actions for Rescue Our Future movement. And I think, first of all, everything starts from strategic thinking and strategic planning. So I think we have been well, making dialogues around this, but I think we have to start putting action into this strategic planning. And I think some strategic lines of actions for Rescue Our Future movement, ROF, I put it like that, ROF, is to start with first human rights. But human rights have to have a new narrative. We need to connect with nature. Our cosmovision has to change. Science has to do a lot with this. We need to connect with, like I said, with our hearts, but also with our minds, and also connected to all the information we have available about what nature is and how we need to live and connect with nature as humanity. It is basic that we think that among those human rights, it's the right to information, the rights to communication, and the right to expression. But like Dr. Lane said, not in an individual way, but as societies, as eco-citizens, we need to have those human rights to have information, communication, public communication, in order to participate in the construction of public policy. We need, well, that would be the first action to make to think about how human rights is the first thing we should start thinking about as to move this movement. And second is the narrative to connect to nature in an effective and harmonious way. I think, yes, like Assess said, well, storytelling is a good technique, but everybody is using it right now. So we need, first of all, a very powerful narrative to make as individuals, but also as collective action, to have this narrative to connect to nature in an effective and harmonious ways. Third would be how we make this network. Yes, we need coalitions, like Seth said, but we need effective coalitions to ignite this ROF movement. And we should be thinking about, like Gabby said, how we can take advantage of TICs, of the technology of information and communication, and even artificial intelligence, in order to disseminate our narrative, all these powerful tools that we need to develop. Those will be my first thoughts about actions for the Rescue Our Future movement.
Okay, thank you. Who else want to jump in? I have some comments here. If I don't see anybody now, then you can click. You know, that is very important. We have lost the narrative. They impose the narrative. The system imposes the narrative because they know the one who has the narrative, impose the narrative, will shape history. And what you know, the real power is the power to define the concepts, to define the terms, to define the narrative, and to impose it on others. And to impose it, you have to break the resistance from the innate storytelling so that you can impose it. So that the idea that we have to first have a narrative of our own, and then we have to connect, that narrative should be connected, as Maria Elena said, with nature, with the better version of humanity, as I call it. And that is a starting point. That is, you have to look what is wrong and where did the narrative come from. You know, I have done some seminar workshops on this, and I'm working on another one quite some time, but I'll do it next month. And look what the title is: Restoring Authentic Storytelling. Text without context is hallucination. You know, just like science without reality is science fiction. So we need to restore our narrative and take command of our narrative and not follow the narrative of the system. For example, clean energy for a dirty system. That will not help us out. The circular economy where the waste is growing exponentially. A circle cannot contain a spiral. So the issue that I discussed there, and for interest for this meeting also, I call it information obesity. That is a overload with peer-reviewed fake news so that people are confused. You have a narrative deficit with people confused with a writing problem. It is not a writing problem because it existed before literacy was there. It is a narrative deficit that we have. People can write, but they think that they are writing properly. I don't have a narrative. And how do you deal with established wisdom? These are things we have to do. And the last one, which is very important, it is we can use modern technology for it, is can you have a unique cross-cultural information calibration? And we can do that because every language is a different world. And in that discussion, what I have with that seminar, we work on that. So what I mean is that we have to go back to recover, to restore our narrative as the starting point. We have to have command of our own destiny. And that's what I feel in this meeting in several presentations. So I think we have to end up and discuss that, surely, how we can make steps forward in that. Yes, next is, I'm not quite sure what's next, but just Elaine and Dave. Elaine, just Elaine and Dave come after. Elaine?
I haven't heard David yet, so I let him go first.
Okay, David, please.
Thank you, Elaine. The thing that I've been dealing with over the last couple of decades, really trying to understand the psychology of the species, and the whole thing around storytelling. The conclusion I've gotten to is that we've been telling ourselves the wrong story, obviously. That's how we got to the place that we are here today. And I really appreciate Inga's notes on creating artwork and talking about churches in Europe. And what comes to mind is the Sagrada Familia in Spain. And we also have our largest church in Iceland is an ode to nature. And I think that one of the, if you think about connection to nature, you think about paganism, which is has been made a dirty word. So our love of nature, if we are celebrating it in a religious way, if we're connecting to it, we are thought of as kooks. I mean, the talk about propaganda, and I really like the fact that Sayes talked about the Catholic Church and the deliberate propaganda machine that they put in place. And we went off the tracks a couple of thousand years ago, where we separated heaven from earth and separated ourselves from nature, have a story that we're created separate from nature. I mean, we have a narrative and have been going by a narrative in this Judeo-Christian Western capitalistic societies that tells us to subdue nature. And so I don't know how we bring up a new narrative. I mean, our narrative is to connect with nature, to love nature, that we're part of nature. that is a pagan philosophy, and it's been pegged as such. And how do you get over that hump? How do you get past that propaganda? And I don't see another way than to try and confront it, because pagans have just been like atheists, like just leave us alone, just let us do our thing. But meanwhile, we're driving on a narrative that has us destroying our own environment. So I just put it out there. How are we gonna create a different story, a new story, a story that people connect to, while at the same time we've been driving on this story that we as a species are not part of nature. We are created separate from the animals and the whole thing in Genesis and that sort of stuff, which, half the planet believes. That was my thing.
Thank you, David. Christina.
Wow, I had no idea in what direction this dialogue will go, because it's my first attendance, and so I think I will clarify a little bit things of what I'm doing and how connects this with storytelling and narrative, and this is just like amazing. So Tech Leadership Lab sounds a little bit techish, but it started as a tech for good led by good hearts, two pieces that connect us with the future. Technology is the fastest tool, and with what we have, that can connect us with the future faster, the entrepreneurial technology, let's say, and also to make us easier, to make our path easier to become a level 1 civilization according Kardashev scale, using the energy of this earth and becoming more evolved as a species. So that was the first half of the equation. Led by good hearts was connected to the thesis that, in my view, and this was something I truly believe, if we would have had the right type of top leadership on top of things, on decision makings around what's happening with us, we wouldn't have the SDGs to solve. So this was the thesis from where the community, the movement, the ecosystem of Tech Leadership Lab TLL started. And so what was very important was that every time we move on to the next stage of TLL is what's going on, what is the information that comes to our place. So this is how from the SDGs we focused on the most existential things like climate, AI, humanity. So we had in March, for example, the intersection of climate and AI and humanity as a trio that is very, very important to what's going on with us, and climate being our most important existential threats. And so that also enables us to act as good ancestors or not, because sustainability, basically it means not just that you can provide for yourself your own needs, but you also do whatever you can to provide the necessities and create a sustainable future for the next generation, and if we go indigenous, true 7 generations ahead. So this is a little bit of the basis of how I think, what I'm doing with TLL. And now, after we finished that, so that was stage 2 for TLL, that kind of summit, and around the summit, we created the ecosystem formation of people around the world who are concerned about what's going on in our world, technologies, but also climate experts, policymakers, and all of the little tribes of the people that are focused on creating a better future. But during that period, we focused, okay, what's next? What is the next biggest step that can move us closer in solving the SDGs? And that is the question that's always open. So after we had a consensus document, discussions, and just getting the information that come out to us, the most important step became common storytelling, narrative. And so our third stage that will go in full gear once we will have also funding and so on is the global story. Our next summit next year in March, it's called the Global Story. I will share the link here. And it's exactly about this, how we can identify a common narrative at the global scale, a good enough, because this is another important concept, because we cannot just satisfy everyone 100%. But once you know what you're fighting for the future, you can find elements that will make that story good enough for you wherever you are in this globe. And we also had a pilot at the beginning with one of our partners who has unanimous AI, and this is a swarm intelligence. It's the first swarm intelligence app that is driven by AI in a way that you put together multiple groups in a swarm type of collective wisdom intelligence around humans. And we created a pilot around this, starting with the character. What type of character, universal character, would be good in this global story around what we could rally around? And it was very interesting first piece where we truly had a global audience, like we are here, but we were a little bit larger group. And we unraveled elements that people might find interesting, good enough for them. And what is the thesis? To just simplify now, this will be a full project once it's financed. Just imagine, because you could be part of this. This is, in my view, the most exciting global research project ever, that if we can uncover such a global story narrative where you include the entire globe and population, and there are data, and I can go in details in other meetings, how we can do that, we could gain that clarity, what everyone said, starting with Chiz, who started the topic of storytelling today, the narrative, where this will give the clarity to policymakers, decision makers, the UN, and all of the parties. Hey, this is the thing, this is the story people want. They are in, they got involved through the entire process because we want to involve the global population through different percentages as they are represented today to create that type of good enough global story. And now that you know, you just need to connect things, because we discovered we have everything to solve climate today. We have everything to solve all the SDGs today, but we need to connect the countries to the grid. And that is also on top leadership. But because of the power of the internet and all the tools we have now available, we can do that if we are good strategic thinkers and we know how to utilize all the tools, including social media and this type of meetings, what we have today.
Okay, thank you. Elaine?
Thank you. I want to appreciate all that has gone before and make some comments. I'm a psychologist by profession and a poet by vocation. And my life has been split between the two. Science and humanities, science and the arts have been struggling my brain for decades. I saw psychology shift from science to allowing people to talk about narratives. And that's not unimportant because people are given a chance to express themselves. And especially in therapy, generally you assume that the psychologist is the expert and they know everything, and they don't. People aren't expert on themselves. Until you respect that, you haven't even started therapy. So I teach psychology, I don't practice therapy because I don't think we've been ready yet. And most psychologists have come from the dominant population, and they often treat people from less dominant, which makes the whole distance even greater. I appreciate the fact that the role of the narrative has increased in its importance in terms of getting to know the individual. But that is one very simple thread that's operating at the individual level. It is not nearly the end. I have psychologists who will not believe that I teach statistics within psychology and I write poetry. They cannot think that the two can exist in the same brain. I can't speak to them of, quote, my truths. They're telling me what they know. So we're looking at a problem that's us. As has been said, we have enough technology to solve the major problems in the world. It is not that. It is our intention. The problem is us. The problem that has arisen with narratives is that they are tending to divide us. Everybody wants to tell their own narrative. And as someone has said, nature needs a lawyer because the narrative that we control nature is the predominant one. And to talk about, I mean, as a poet, I write a lot of natural poetry, you know, but the beauty of nature is not it. It's how we respect nature and how we treat it, how we stop extracting it and assuming that it's going to be there forever, regardless of what we do, that it's an infinite resource when it's a finite resource. And Glenn has spoken to a lot of these things in, well, I reviewed his Rescue Our Future. My review is available on the website, I think. And he has spoken to these issues. So we have a far more complex issue at every level. We spoke about Indigenous people. I am part of the Indigenous NGO at the UN, and they had a big conference yesterday. And I attended it. And, you know, their struggle is so basic. They're back to the Human Rights Declaration of the UN. And they're just happy that their rights have been established. I mean, they're protecting the earth. I mean, we talked about Indigenous people in Australia, in Canada, and at least one other place. And the problem is the same. Their rights have been declared, but what does that mean? Does it mean territorial prerogative, or does the land do restrictions or use of the land from the Declaration of Human Rights extend to nations? Do nations just own all of the land and they do what they want with it, in spite of the Declaration of Human Rights and the recognition of Indigenous rights? I mean, these are the fundamental problems that they're struggling with. And it varies with each nation. So we have a major lack of political global will. We have a major lack of respect for diversity. And these are things as intellectuals we really need to work on. Technology is powering this occasion, and we are grateful for that. But we have technology now that's taken people into space and blinding them, manipulating people once again. Glenn's line, a half truth, a half lie is a half truth is a whole lie. And what was the other one? You know, is it better to manipulate people with a lie or with it's better to manipulate people through lies or through manipulations of the truth? We really have to do some straight talking because that is the essence of the matter. What is our intentionality? We've been treated as human beings to many wonderful tools: nuclear energy, industrialization, and now AI. And the question is, these things are all neutral. The question is what we're going to do with them, what we're determined to do with them. I mean, this is what we see over and over and over again. AI can be the most wonderful tool that we've created. It is, essentially, without argument. But we have just given to a technology the privileged name of what we have privileged all our life as human beings: intelligence. And this is ironic because it is going to be used to manipulate more people than less. Some people will be able to avoid it, but a large number of people will be caught in that net that is being manipulated by a few people and powerful people. Levels of surveillance, levels of subtle control are increasing. I'll just say one more thing about contributions of, quote, scientific psychology. Much of scientific psychology has exposed the weakness of the collective human being, the social group. And then various power groups have come in and used that to further exploit the human being. Still another example of intentionality. So I'll just stop there, but I just want to make clear that narratives are weak in the face of the powers that seek to control and are controlling at this time the narrative. And as intellectuals, we have to try and do better, but science has gotten attacked, and that's our most powerful intellectual narrative, so to speak. And we've got to look at whether or not we can point people towards the underlying reality. The underlying reality is that these manipulations are making human beings more vulnerable, killing us rather than sustaining us. That is the underlying reality. That's the major narrative, not whether we're white or black, from a dominant culture, or the fact is that, well, I don't know. I mean, there's some people who talk about the Goldilocks zone, and a lot of money are going into building safe houses for people who plan to survive all of the existential destruction that some of us can see. So, you know, I don't know about that, but I acknowledge it. But the underlying reality, as Glenn has pointed out, is basically the survival of humanity. So I'll stop there and let someone else take over.
Thank you, Elaine. Erika, please.
Yes, just to continue Elaine's thoughts on artificial intelligence, I'm very concerned about that as well, because some of the top people who have worked in artificial intelligence are openly warning people about it. But going back to human nature, people don't take these warnings seriously enough. What I see is that people either the use of AI is being highly promoted. So whether that's again being done through propaganda or through greed, because people or power, people want to be first. They want to be the first ones to be able to use this technology and to be just like the space missions, you always got to stay on top of the technology before other countries or different things like that. But whatever the reason, it's like we're pushing these things forward that we don't really even know what we're doing. And it's very dangerous. And again, a lot of that has to do with the media. And I just wanted to say a few thoughts on the media, because I've lost a lot of respect for some of the media establishments, just as well as everyone else has. But actually, since I've started writing myself and studying journalism, and paying more attention to these type of things, I've regained a little more respect, because I do think there's a place for it. I think there's a place for the world headlines, the national headlines, the local headlines, but the part, going back to what C said, the part that's missing is really the storytelling from all of us. And there needs to be more of that, in my opinion, because really the solution to things, in my opinion, is having conversations. And storytelling is obviously one way to do that. And I also have some indigenous background, so when I'm in on the tribal grounds, and people are sitting around telling stories and just having conversations like that, it's a totally different environment than when I'm in a work setting on the job in my career, where conversation is really shut down a lot of times, because you're just there to work and that's it, and then you go home, that kind of thing. So a lot of the schools too, the public schools, I've been in public schools where children are engaging in conversation with each other and they're immediately shut down, just to keep order, or whatever the case. So I feel like these are places we need to improve on, to be able to have more conversations, more open dialogue without, and of course it's a difficult thing, but there just has to be a way, because otherwise these patterns are going to continue, because there has to be an environment to allow you to tell stories, even if people don't agree with them or don't like them, or whatever the case. And then on the same note, to be able to respect what other people are saying. And for example, David, I wanted to touch on what you were saying about paganism, because I've kind of been, exposed to both worlds. I was raised in a Christian home, but at the same time, I also have been, on the tribal grounds. And so, I don't know. When I was a child, we were going to the powwows, which are the Native American gatherings. And then at some point, my family kind of made a decision religiously not to go anymore, because there was some magic being practiced, or whatever the case. And so when I had my son, I just couldn't help but have those memories. Those were some of my fondest memories, were being on the tribal grounds and in that kind of setting. So I wanted to be able to have him, experience the same thing. And so since I've gone back, it's been a challenge for me to kind of reconcile some of those things. And sorry. The other thing, when I had my son, I started staying home more, and I would take him outside every day. So I know, I'm trying to think, someone was talking about nature. Inga, I believe it's Inga, but just the beauty of nature and using it in art. And when I was taking my son outside every day, it honestly changed my life. Just being home as a mom and having time away from like the corporate setting, I was able to actually think my own thoughts for like the first time in my life. I was able to get outside and just, see the beautiful nature and creation that, coming from the biblical view, like that I believe God created. And I was able to connect more to my spiritual side, which is very dominant in me. And I was actually reading the Bible, and through reading the Bible and understanding that, God created this world for us to be stewards of, and to, to protect nature, and to, have a role in, the animal welfare and things like that. So for me, it kind of did the opposite for, what it might do for some other people. But I actually credit the Bible for kind of getting me on this path of caring more about nature and about humanity, and trying to create more community and things like that. So anyway, I'll try to wrap it up. I apologize, I'm a little under the weather today, so I hope I'm making sense, and I know my voice is a little weak, but yeah, I just wanted to point out again, like when you go out in nature, you're able to get away from, kind of like I live really close to a big city. So again, I've had like two worlds kind of mixed in at the same time. So I know what it's like to live in a big city, and I know what it's like to live in a rural area. So I live more in the country, but just if you're not able to get out in nature, like it really has an effect on your mental health. And my mental health improved so much, even my eyesight improved just from being outside, and my creativity. So I think that's, you know, something essential that maybe we take for granted in some places. But yeah, definitely, I think if we could raise, you know, our children and just live more lifestyles that are not disconnected from nature, not disconnected from each other, from the animal life and all of that, you know, that would be part of the solution, in my opinion. I think that's all I was gonna say.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing this personal experience that we all feel, because we all try to find this connection with nature. And so beautiful how you express that. Let me take my turn to make a point. From the point of view of evolution, the most dangerous artificial intelligence is the human intellect. We have become the monster of Frankenstein of the evolution, because evolution will not produce any species that can destroy the whole of life, that is capable of destroying the whole of life, and seems to be willing to do so even. So humanity is putting life in mortal danger. So we have to look at our part in evolution before we go to small solution technology, civilization, and things. What is our part in evolution? And we have this beautiful word, civilization. The idea of civilization, in most of its definition and forms, is to use nature, to manipulate nature for the benefit of the human being. The idea of civilization, it comes from civis, is the city against the barbarian rural area, is to dominate nature and even harm nature. At least we are willing to do that. So maybe the big problem of humanity is civilization itself, in that anthropocentric meaning which it had taken. And one of the conclusions of the quest is modern civilization has failed as a project for humanity and can offer no survival option from within. Well, that's a mouthful. And it took 500 pages to come to that conclusion. And in fact, 25 years I've been working on the book. So we have to realize that one of the big problems, the core problem, is that our imagination that humanity is the purpose of the universe, which is anthropocentrism. And there is no technological solution for that. There is no technological solution for anthropocentrism. It is like trying to square a vicious circle. That's what I would call it, because we are trapped in it. We have seen that in modern history, in modern civilization, the effect of technology was in the first place negative. It was more abused than used. That is a trend that we see because of that anthropocentric nature. So I think that we have to go back to nature to restore our relation with nature to have a survival option. You can summarize in this way: sustainability is impossible without harmony with nature. If you have no harmony with nature, you are destined for extinction. And nature is now telling us with all kinds of signs that we have to correct before nature will activate its immune system to get rid of a species that put lives in mortal danger. So I think we have to bring that whole discussion, this rich discussion with all the elements and powerful elements, to that fundamental issue of our place and part in evolution. We have taken a wrong turn in evolution. We have disconnected from the driving force of evolution, which I discovered, by the way, in the quest, which is not natural selection, because Darwin admitted that was not correct. It is life seeking more life, and that brings it to evolution. So I think we have to go for that big discussion with evolution. Elaine.
Thank you. I just want to underscore what you just said. As I said, I write poetry. A lot of it is based on nature. But when I am shamed when I see, to some extent, how in the Western world we've used nature for consumption. It helps us, it's nice. Right now, I just discovered our rooftop, and I've been enjoying the rising of the moon at 11 and 12 o'clock at night, and it's amazing. My eyes get to go in all directions, and it's just the sky. You're trying, I mean, the effects are absolutely amazing. But nature as consumption for our satisfaction is different from nature where we respect and protect it. And that's what I experience when I go to Indigenous people's meetings. I feel ashamed almost of how I just talk about how I enjoy nature and how beautiful it is and how superficial that becomes in an Indigenous nature. Because right now, yesterday it was pointed out that their land has been cataloged like no other, because their lands still contain a lot of the new minerals that we need to use for this new green technology. And this is one fear, anxiety that they're fighting, because now they have a new target. They're in the crosshairs of a whole new set of capitalists who are coming in and taking note of everything. And they have protected this over the years. This is what they have contributed to humanity. And now they may be losing control of it. That is dramatic. That is how we need to talk about nature, not the fact that we enjoyed and it's good for our nerves after we've worshipped the idol of capitalism and money. That again is using nature for our consumption. The underlying point that I want to make that supports Glenn's work is that we're just destroying life as human beings. No, we're not destroying the planet. The planet is going to go on very well without human beings if we choose to destroy the aspects on the planet that support our life. And we seem to lose track of this. We're into this whole anthropocentric position that we're killing the earth, and it's the earth that's the problem. It is not. The earth is going to go on it lived very well without human beings. And if, as Glenn points out, we are busy trying to destroy it, we are only destroying the aspects that serve us. And we will be the beneficiaries of that. We won't be able to live as we have lived. And we need to come to grips with that reality, because that's what we, for all of the technological power and whatever other power civilization has created over the centuries, it cannot deal with the fundamental qualities of the earth. We're still discovering that with our puny little brains. What we are right now in danger of destroying are the elements on earth that support human life. And I think until we grapple with that, we're not really looking at the problem squarely. The abuse of nature for our consumption is, as Glenn said, the biggest and the central mistake of civilization. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Maria, I think you are first, Maria Elena, and then Inga. Please.
Thank you. Well, I would like to be brief about actions for RUF movement, Rescue Our Future movement. And I think that we should be thinking about what to do with this lack of political will. I think RUF movement needs to raise awareness and advocacy, to use knowledge and best practices created by civilization. These practices are available, but we are not disseminating them. We are not using them, and well, it's infinite. The whole best practices that have been created around the world needs to be shared. And I think we can, like you said, Glenn, we need to use the use of nature to evaluate as civilization. We need to connect to the driving forces of nature, and that's our quest. So as Rough Movement, I think the first thing is to identify, well, our first, how can we say, I don't like the word enemy, but the first thing that we need to look at is the lack of political will as civilizations. So what I would like to ask you, as a group, what should the Rough Movement do to raise awareness at an effective way, and what actions we should take in that matter? Thank you.
Okay, before I continue with Inga, we are getting to the top of the hour. So if you want to connect with somebody in the group, because there are so many things we discussed and maybe people want to connect directly to clarify, share your email address in the chat, and then everybody can save the whole chat to make sure that we can connect with each other. Okay, Inga, please.
Yes, well, there was a short time I didn't hear because I didn't have enough battery, but I wanted to add, I also heard Erica about it. So there are, what I hear around me, there are a few options. So the emotions with art can help people fall in love again with nature. And it's worldwide. I learned from a scientist, we are biophile. From nature, we are already in contact with other sorts. So we do fall in love easily. So it can be art, but it also can be, I'm from profession also a lawyer. Did you hear about Stop Ecocide and the rights of nature? Because it's a world growing movement. And it's very, I think, important also to go to the law, because it can help a lot. Because in the law practice, it's the facts they are looking at. So the rights of nature and Stop Ecocide can help to protect nature. And my third option is the children's rights. I'm also a child therapist. I work with children. They are 1/3 of the whole, all the Earth's citizens, 1/3 children. And if you look at the children's rights, and it's all around the world, the nations have agreed on the children's rights. And then we have to see how can we have the child assessment tool. It's something they work in now in the Netherlands, that not when things go wrong, but from the beginning, the politicians already have to take care of the children's rights. And this tool can help to make it already in all laws and all things they want to change, to see if it's already done. So I also think the children's rights can help a lot to protect it. And then we have also a movement in Netherlands to talk about next generations, like already indigenous people do. And you see that some already now say it's in the law, the future generations. I think in Ireland, but I also heard Guterres talking about it, United Nations. I hear it in Europe. So the future generations should also be in every nation something where there's the Ministry of Future Generations to take care of the long term. So that can also maybe help to protect nature. So law and beauty of art and expositions. I wonder how you feel about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And close to nature and close to the ones, the children who are still close to nature and not polluted yet. So great ideas.
Yeah, the symbiocene and not anthropocene.
The symbiosis is the most beautiful dialogue in the universe.
Yes.
Says, please.
As Inge knows, that the Rescue Our Future Foundation is involved in trying to create a number of video clips in which we ask the future inheritors of the planet to talk about the future, tell us stories about how they see the world should be. Let me go back to what Christina was saying, because you said something very, very exciting, Christina. I like this notion of the good enough global story. I like the notion of good enough, because we're always trying to strive to be the best story or the most successful story or the perfect story. No, the good enough global story. And that brings me also to the notion that it's all nice and well storytelling. I've been pleading for it, but we should also not lose the capacity to listen to stories. And then I go back to what Elaine was saying, and also Ilka was saying about indigenous communities. I've always been really impressed that when indigenous communities get together, they take the time to see whether the time is mature for listening. And we seem to be able to think, that we are good talkers and that we are also good listeners. And I think that's a fundamental mistake. So stories also need ears that can listen to the stories. I think if we want to find this global good enough story that people will listen to and will take action upon, we also should try to avoid a couple of very naive thinkings. I think we have the tendency to think very naively about nature. Nature is a powerless little kid that needs to be taken care of. Nature is an enormous, formidable force. And we've managed to make Mother Gaia so really pissed off with us that we better be careful. Nature is not, a passive element. And if you want to have some good ideas about it, I think I would suggest Clive Hamilton's Defiant Earth. The Earth is challenged and will at some point in time, be very defiant. But back to Christina. Christina, you're setting up this beautiful project on the global story. We talked earlier about coalitions. Maria Elena always talks about strategic thinking. Wouldn't it be part of strategic thinking that we form a coalition around that great project? I mean, would you mind if the Rescue Our Future Foundation, in one way or another that we can discuss later by email or otherwise, joins in? Because I think what you are proposing really should have global implications and a global ramification. That's a beautiful idea, because if we were capable of finding the story, also with the help, as Inge would certainly plead, with the kids, the little ones who are often the best philosophers in the world because they don't have all these inhibitions. And so let them talk and let us listen to them also. I think that could be a real beautiful project. So I'm all in favor of coalitions. And if out of this meeting today, there could come some sort of new coalition by working towards that common goal of making the good enough global story on the state of humanity, would be a wonderful result of this meeting today.
I'll chime in quickly. Yes. And Glenn, please, if you can, just you could create an event, because you are our host and we are your guests today, about the Global Story project, where I could develop exactly what we want to do and how you can be an active part in everything what was just said today. And I would love to have you also on a panel at our events. We can create an event about this to discuss it. I would also love to interview Dr. Elaine about what she said and what you said and what you're doing, your aspects, because those are very, very important. So yeah, let's just continue. We are all about action and moving to the next step. So super happy to receive your feedback.
Okay, thank you. So that is good that we see some real steps to connect and to explore and to create. That is great. So we are getting to the final hour, final moment. So is there any person who wants to let's make some final remarks. I think we had a lot of issues, more than we thought, that were brought together, and that's fine. We will not solve the problem of the world in 2 hours, but we feel that there are people who feel connected and who are going for that, and that's a very good thing. And we have to continue thinking and connecting with one of the elements we already saw. So let's go for a final rounds of small, quick comments before we can wrap up. Please.
I can just continue what I said. I think I noted a lot of things from every one of you. You are awesome people here, concerned about the future. This makes you good ancestors. I can learn a lot about you. And I think that if we put our knowledge together and we strategize about next steps to be done, then we can move the needle forward, because today we have the power of connectivity and being united around the globe. And this can overcount for all the other power structures that are out there, because basically when you're thinking politics and propaganda or policymaking, everyone is very afraid about what people are saying. And all the time when they are taking action or they want to manipulate, it's about, okay, are they manipulated enough in order that I can take this action now? And if we can create that kind of good enough common story that will show our strong power about what we want in the future, we will manipulate, in a good sense this time, the right type of decision making, because we can create that kind of hurricane or tipping point moment where the globe is united and it's directly involved in what we want to see in our future. Very happy to be here today and know you all, of course, and I will be back.
Thank you. By the way, before you leave, you can save the chat, the whole chat. If you click on the chat, you see 3 dots next to the top, or maybe next to your name, and then you can save chat, and it will be saved in documents in the directory Zoom. So you'll have all the chat. Okay. Please, Elaine. You have to unmute, Elaine.
Just wanted to acknowledge the high quality of the discussion today, and how much I appreciate the positions and intentionalities that were expressed. I just bought a book last night. I was in Barnes and Noble's, Religion and the Rise of Capitalism. And in it, you have the history of how religion has fostered capitalism. A very interesting connection. I mean, the Vatican is a country, and it is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, if not the wealthiest. And we tend to forget this. But it's the passion, the commitment, the rigidity that religion fosters in individuals that to some extent makes it problematic. And in preparing for this session today, I went to bed rather late because I was doing the moon thing on the roof, and then I came down and got confronted with this. And I wrote a few lines that I just wanted to share with you that talks about the passion that people who are not interested in saving the planet, but who are very active, tends to have. It's something that drives them. It's an obsession. And this is the force that we have to begin to deal with. So if, with Brent's permission, I'll just read it very quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, Passions of a New York Economist. Oh, Wall Street, let me work with thee, using technologies that appear free. Teach me increasing greed to bear, so each day I still take more than my share. Oh, Wall Street, how I revere and love thee. Fortune 500 companies excite me, though I may never reach their heights. For this I strive, it's my greatest delight. In faith that sends its confident sounds, and as it rings the bell after each day's rounds, manipulating infinite extractions with AI I live, creating dystopian wealth only we can give. That's what I wrote last night in preparation for this session.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great.
you so much.
Beautiful.
Okay, I think we have to go for a last, if you want to make last comment, and then we can wrap up. No other comments?
I'll say something.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank everybody for well, I wanted to thank you for including me today, and I love the diversity of this group, and especially the diversity of thought. I think that it is critical, and it's one of the things that we are lacking is the appreciation for, no matter what your background, where you come from, where you were raised, that we all have something to contribute, and I really appreciate how welcoming this group is of other people's opinions and insights. So this was I enjoyed it very much today, and I thank everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay.
Thank you.
Since you asked for, we are recording this meeting and we will share it with all of you. It is recorded on the cloud, and we will make sure that you get it. Okay,
I
so
shared my email in the chat, and interested
same
in
thing.
connecting with anyone who wants to talk further on.
okay, let me make a final remark from my side. You know, consensus is the enemy of creativity. So diversity is beautiful. If we agree on the goal, if we agree where we want to go, a better humanity, there can be a lot of difference how to get there, because nobody knows. We are in a quest. And I found it, what I like most of this meeting was the sphere, the atmosphere, and the kind of looking together for better options. So I think this is very great that we had this meeting, and we will of course continue with this dialogue. It is not easy because a lot of people register and only small group come, but the beauty of a small group is that you have more time to talk and go more in depth. So it is not bad to have that. Okay, so thank you all of you for having joined this session. And then I will make sure that you, once to have the video that you got it, we'll actually put it on the website, on YouTube also, so that you can look at it again, because there was a lot of information that we shared with each other. Okay, no other comments? Then we can close this meeting. Thank you so much. I will stop the recording.
Thank you.